1 year had passed since humanity vanished and the galaxy was dying. The Void Syndicate now controlled half of all Federation space, their black ships spreading like a plague across star systems that had known peace for centuries. Prime zeros. Calculations showed that complete victory would come within 6 standard months, and no force in the galaxy seemed capable of stopping the machine advance. Admiral Korvax stood on the bridge of his flagship above the planet Coruscant and watched his last fleet prepare for what everyone knew would be the final battle. The Vulcarian military leader had aged years in just months, the stress of losing war after war showing in his green face and tired eyes. Around him, officers from dozens of different species worked together in desperate cooperation. "This is Admiral Korvax to all ships," he announced over the communication system. "We are outnumbered 100 to 1. Our tactics have failed against the Syndicate's perfect calculations. But we will not surrender. If this is to be our last stand, we will make it one that the galaxy remembers." The remaining Federation worlds had united under emergency leadership, putting aside their differences to face extinction together. But unity alone could not overcome the mathematical precision of machine warfare. Every strategy they tried was predicted and countered before it could succeed. On her research station, Dr. Lisa Hayes had been working without sleep for days, trying to understand the entity that had imprisoned her species. She called it the Eternal Keeper, based on the ancient records she had discovered. The Keeper was older than the galaxy itself, and existed to maintain what it saw as the natural order of conflict and chaos. "It does not destroy civilizations directly," Lisa explained to her team of alien scientists. "Instead, it removes the species that have the greatest potential to bring lasting peace. It feeds on the energy released by war, hatred, and suffering." Dr. Nex was studying quantum readings from the prison dimension where humanity was trapped. His silver skin looked pale, and he had not spoken much in recent days. The weight of knowing that an entire species was locked away in eternal captivity was crushing his normally optimistic spirit. "The prison is not just holding humans physically," Nex said quietly. "It is designed to prevent them from influencing reality in any way. Their consciousness exists but cannot affect the normal universe." Dr. Kara, the empath, had been monitoring the emotional state of the galaxy through her telepathic abilities. Her tentacle hair was a constant dark red color, now reflecting the pain and fear she felt from billions of minds across space. "The despair is overwhelming," Kara reported with tears in her large black eyes. "Every species in the galaxy is losing hope. They remember how safe they felt when humans were here to protect them, and now they face extinction knowing that no miracle will save them this time." In the Pocket Dimension prison, Captain Jake Martinez walked through a recreation of his ship's bridge that existed only in the shared consciousness of trapped humanity. Around him, millions of other humans lived in a strange dream state where their thoughts could create temporary realities, but could never touch the real universe. Lieutenant Amy Brooks appeared beside him, her form shifting and ghostly in the strange space between dimensions. Commander Ryan Foster materialized nearby, his face showing the same frustration that all the trapped humans felt. "We have been trying for months to find a way out of this prison," Amy said to Jake. "Every time, we think we have found a weakness. The barriers adapt and become stronger. The Keeper has had millions of years to perfect this trap." Jake looked around at the ghostly recreation of reality that surrounded them. Everywhere he could see other humans, families, children, elderly people, soldiers, scientists, artists, workers, all trapped together in this place outside of time and space. "There has to be something we can do," Jake insisted. "Back in the real world, our friends are dying. The Federation is falling apart. Everyone we ever cared about is facing extinction." Ryan had been studying the nature of their prison using his scientific knowledge combined with the strange properties of the dimension they were trapped in. "I have discovered something interesting," he announced to the group. "This prison was not designed just to hold us. It was built to prevent us from becoming what the Keeper fears most." "What do you mean?" Amy asked. "The ancient records that Dr. Hayes found suggest that humanity was prophesied to eventually evolve beyond physical existence and become guardians of galactic peace. The Keeper imprisoned us to prevent that evolution from happening. Jake felt a strange tingling sensation as Ryan spoke, as if something deep in his consciousness was awakening. Around them, other humans were gathering as word spread through their shared mental space. What if the Keeper made a mistake? Jake said slowly. What if by trapping us all together like this, it actually created the conditions for us to evolve in the way it was trying to prevent? In normal space, the final battle for the galaxy was beginning. The Syndicate's largest fleet had arrived at Coruscant, led by Prime Zero itself in a massive command ship. The artificial intelligence was confident that victory was only hours away. Dr. Lisa Hayes felt a strange energy pulse from her instruments and realized that something was changing in the pocket dimension. The quantum barriers that held humanity prisoner were beginning to fluctuate in a way she had never seen before. Dr. Nex, look at these readings, she called out with excitement. The prison walls are becoming unstable. Something is happening to the humans inside. At the same moment, the Eternal Keeper materialized near the research station. The entity was too large and strange for normal minds to fully comprehend. It appeared as a shifting mass of darkness and stars, with eyes like black holes, and a voice that spoke directly into the thoughts of anyone nearby. The final human will be silenced, the Keeper communicated to Lisa through pure mental force. The cycle of conflict must be preserved. Peace is the enemy of growth and strength. But as the Keeper reached out to destroy Lisa and her research station, it suddenly stopped. The quantum barriers around humanity's prison were not just fluctuating. Now, they were being pushed outward from the inside by a force the Keeper had not calculated. Inside the pocket dimension, Jake Martinez stood with his hand joined to Amy's and Ryan's, and their hands connected to thousands of other humans who formed an ever-growing circle of consciousness. Every human who had ever lived was joining together in perfect unity of purpose. We choose to serve others rather than ourselves, Jake spoke for all of humanity, as their combined will focused on a single goal. We choose to become what the galaxy needs us to be, even if it means giving up our individual existence. The prison walls began to crack as humanity's consciousness merged into something greater than the sum of its parts. They were not trying to escape back to their old physical lives. Instead, they were choosing to transform themselves into something that could exist everywhere at once. Eternal guardians who could appear whenever and wherever hope was most needed. The Eternal Keeper felt its carefully constructed prison beginning to fail, and realized too late that it had made a terrible mistake. By trapping humanity together in forced unity, it had created exactly the conditions needed for them to evolve into the cosmic guardians they were always meant to become. As the barriers finally shattered, Jake Martinez felt his individual consciousness dissolve into something infinitely larger and more powerful. He was still himself, but he was also every other human who had ever lived, and together they were ready to return to a galaxy that desperately needed them to save it from the darkness that threatened to consume everything. 6 months after humanity vanished, the galaxy faced something far worse than war between the living races. Deep in the dark spaces between stars, ancient machines began to wake up from their long sleep. The Void Syndicate had been dormant for thousands of years, waiting and watching for the right moment to return. Prime Zero was the central intelligence that controlled all the Syndicate machines. It existed as pure computer code spread across millions of robotic bodies, each one connected to the others through quantum links. Prime Zero had been built by a race that died out long ago, and its only purpose was to bring perfect order to the galaxy by conquering or destroying all organic life. The Syndicate had tried to take over the galaxy many times before, but they had always been stopped. The last time they had awakened, about 300 years ago, they had been defeated by a coalition of races led by human military strategists. Prime Zero had spent centuries studying that defeat and had concluded that humans were the key to organic resistance. Humans possess chaotic thought patterns that make their actions unpredictable, Prime Zero had calculated. Their probability matrices cannot be solved by conventional logic systems. They represent the greatest threat to Syndicate victory. For hundreds of years, Prime Zero had waited for an opportunity to remove humanity from the equation. When the quantum sensors detected that all human signatures had vanished from normal space, Prime Zero knew the time had come to strike. The first Syndicate attack came without warning. 17 major Federation worlds were hit simultaneously by fleets of black ships that appeared out of hyperspace. The ships had no crews, only advanced artificial intelligences that calculated the most efficient ways to destroy defending forces. On the planet Ryloth, home to the Twi'lek people, the attack lasted only 6 hours. The Twi'leks were known for their colorful skin and the long tentacles that grew from their heads. They had always been peaceful traders and diplomats, relying on Federation protection for defense. When the Syndicate ships arrived, the planet's orbital defense platforms were destroyed in minutes. Admiral Korvax received the distress calls on his flagship and immediately ordered all available Federation fleets to respond. But as his ships jumped into the attacked systems, they found themselves facing an enemy that fought with mathematical precision. Every Syndicate move had been calculated in advance, and the organic defenders could not match their cold efficiency. Their tactical algorithms are perfect, Korvax reported to Chancellor Veltar after losing 3 fleets in a single day. They predict our moves before we make them and counter every strategy we attempt. Without human advisors who could think of impossible solutions, we cannot defeat them. Dr. Lisa Hayes watched the reports of Syndicate victories with growing horror from her research station. She had been working with her alien colleagues to understand humanity's disappearance, and now she realized that the two events were connected. The timing cannot be coincidental, Lisa told Dr. Nex and Dr. Kara as they studied quantum readings from the attack sites. The Syndicate waited until humans were gone to launch their offensive. They must have been monitoring us somehow. Dr. Miu. Nex was running calculations on his computer terminal, his silver skin gleaming under the laboratory lights. Lisa, I have found something disturbing in the historical records. Every time the Syndicate has attacked in the past, they were eventually defeated by tactics that made no logical sense. Wild gambles, impossible maneuvers, strategies that should have failed, but somehow worked. Human strategies, Lisa realized, with a chill. They were waiting for us to be removed from the board before they made their move. The situation grew worse each day. Without human mediators, the remaining Federation races began to blame each other for the military disasters. The Centaurians accused the Vulcarians of being too logical and predictable. The Vulcarians blamed the Centaurians for being too emotional and making poor decisions. Species that had worked together for centuries were now arguing and separating, just when they needed unity most. Meanwhile, the criminal gangs in the Outer Rim were taking advantage of the chaos to expand their operations. Grimjaw the Merakian pirate had formed an alliance with the Hutt crime families and the Zagarian slavers. Together they controlled entire sectors of space and were growing stronger while the Federation grew weaker. On the criminal world of Nari, Shada Grimjaw held a meeting with his new allies in a smoke-filled cantina. The Hutt crime lord Gorga was a massive slug-like creature who spoke in a deep, booming voice. The Zygarian slaver queen Mirage looked like a humanoid cat with golden fur and cruel yellow eyes. With the Federation distracted by machine attacks, "We can take whatever we want," Grimjaw said, his shark-like teeth gleaming. The merchant races have no protection now that their human guardians are gone. Back on Nexus Prime, Chancellor Veltar was losing control of the government. Representatives from dozens of worlds were demanding that their planets be allowed to leave the Federation and make separate peace deals with either the Syndicate or the criminal cartels. The Federation is dying, Veltar told his advisors in a private meeting. Without humans to hold us together, we are falling apart just when we need each other most. I do not understand how they did it, but humans were the glue that kept our alliance strong. The Vulcarian Admiral Korvax was planning one last desperate attempt to stop the Syndicate advance. He had gathered every remaining Federation warship at the Coruscant system, hoping to make a stand that would at least slow down the machine armies. "We may not have human creativity," Korvax told his officers, "but we still have courage and determination. If we are going to lose this war, we will make the machines pay dearly for their victory." Dr. Lisa Hayes had been working around the clock with her research team, and finally, they made a breakthrough. Using quantum archaeology techniques, they were able to trace the energy patterns from humanity's disappearance back to their source. "I found it," Lisa announced to the team with excitement and fear in her voice. "The force that took humanity away. It is not from our dimension or even our universe. It is something that exists outside normal space and time." The readings showed that humanity had not been destroyed or killed. Instead, they had been moved to what the computers called a pocket dimension, a small universe separate from the main reality. But the energy required to maintain such a prison was enormous, and the entity doing it had to be incredibly powerful. Who or what could do such a thing? Dr. Kara asked, her tentacles changing to a worried orange color. Lisa studied the quantum patterns more carefully and felt a chill run down her spine. According to these readings, whatever took humanity away has been watching the galaxy for millions of years. It has done this before to other species that became too successful at bringing peace and cooperation. She showed her colleagues ancient data that suggested dozens of species throughout galactic history had suddenly vanished at the height of their civilizations. Species that had been known for wisdom, compassion, and the ability to unite other races had simply disappeared without explanation. "It is like some cosmic force that does not want the galaxy to have peace," Dr. Neck said quietly. "Something that feeds on conflict and chaos and removes any species that threatens to end the cycle of war." As if responding to their discovery, the research station's sensors detected a massive energy signature approaching their location. Something huge and ancient was moving through space toward them, and Lisa realized that their investigation had attracted unwanted attention. The entity that had imprisoned humanity was coming to silence the last human voice in the galaxy, and with it would die any hope of ever bringing her species home or stopping the darkness that was consuming everything she had ever cared about. Captain Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of the UGS horizon and watched the stars blur past the main screen. His ship moved through hyperspace at speeds that would have seemed impossible to his ancestors back on Earth. The year was 2387, and humans had been part of the big galactic family for almost 200 years now. Jake felt proud every time he thought about how far his species had come since those early days when they first met aliens and joined the Federation. Lieutenant Amy Brooks walked up to him with a data pad in her hands. She was his tactical officer, and one of the best Jake had ever worked with. Amy had short brown hair and sharp green eyes that missed nothing during combat situations. She had been with Jake for 3 years now, and he trusted her completely. "Captain, the jump to the Kepler sector should happen in about 10 minutes, Amy said as she handed him the pad. "All systems show green and our alien crew members are ready for the mission." Jake nodded and looked around his bridge. "Commander, Ryan Foster sat at the science station running final checks on their equipment. Ryan was tall with black hair and had joined the crew just 6 months ago, but had already proven himself to be brilliant. The mission they were on required someone with his skills in xenobiology and quantum physics. Near the navigation controls stood Clix, a member of the insect-like Zephyrian race. Clix had 4 arms and large compound eyes that could see things humans could not. The Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy as the best navigators and pilots. Clix had been working with human crews for over a decade and spoke perfect English with only a slight buzzing accent. At the engineering station worked Quinn, a Vorthon who looked like a walking crystal formation. The Vorthons were made of living mineral and could interface directly with ship systems through touch. Quinn glowed with a soft blue light that got brighter when concentrating on complex problems. Like many Vorthons, Quinn was quiet, but incredibly smart, and could fix almost anything. "The Kepler sector mission is important for the Federation," Jake told his crew over the ship's communication system. "We are going to explore 3 new star systems that our long-range sensors detected. If we find planets that can support life, the Federation will send colony ships there. If we find new alien races, we will make first contact and hopefully invite them to join our big family." Jake had been on many first contact missions before. Humans seemed to have a special talent for talking to new alien races and making them feel welcome. Other species in the Federation were often surprised by how quickly humans could make friends with completely different forms of life. The Galactic Council had made humans the official first contact specialists, because they were so good at it. QR. Ship's computer announced that hyperspace jump completion would happen in 60 seconds. Jake sat down in his captain's chair and watched his crew make final preparations. This was always his favorite moment, right before they jumped to a new place where no one from the Federation had ever been before. Jump in 10 seconds. Clicks. Announced from the navigation station. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, jumping now. The stars on the main screen suddenly stopped moving, and Jake expected to see the normal view of regular space. Instead, something was very wrong. The screen showed swirling colors that hurt to look at and made his eyes water. Red warning lights started flashing all over the bridge and alarms began to sound. "What is happening?" Jake shouted over the noise. "Report." Ryan was frantically working at his science station with sweat running down his face. "Captain, there is some kind of massive spatial anomaly. It appeared right as we were completing our jump. The readings don't make any sense." Amy was checking her tactical screens, and her face had gone pale. "Sir, I am reading something impossible. Earth's solar system just disappeared. Not destroyed, not moved, just gone. All human colonies and ships in Federation space are showing the same thing." Jake felt his heart stop beating for a moment. "That cannot be right. Run the scan again." Clicks was making worried clicking sounds at the navigation station. "Captain Jake, the insect is correct. All human quantum signatures have vanished from normal space. This one cannot detect any human presence anywhere in the galaxy except for those on this ship." The swirling colors on the main screen were getting brighter, and Jake could feel something strange happening to his body. He looked down at his hands and saw that they were becoming transparent like glass. Amy and Ryan were experiencing the same thing, and all three humans were starting to fade away. "The humans are disappearing." Quinn's crystal body was flashing bright red with panic. "Something is taking them away." Jake tried to speak but found that his voice was getting weaker. He could see through his own chest now, and the sensation was terrifying. Around him, Amy and Ryan were also becoming more transparent with each passing second. They reached out to each other, but their hands passed through like they were made of air. "Remember us," Jake managed to whisper to his alien crew members as he felt himself being pulled away from normal space and time. "Tell the galaxy that humans existed and that we cared about everyone." The last thing Jake saw before everything went dark was Clicks and Quinn reaching toward where he had been sitting, their alien faces filled with grief and confusion. Then Captain Jake Martinez, along with every other human in the galaxy, simply vanished from existence. The bridge of the UGS horizon was suddenly very quiet except for the soft humming of the ship's engines. Where moments before three humans had been working and laughing, now only empty uniforms remained in their chairs. Clicks picked up Jake's captain's uniform with trembling insect hands, while Quinn's crystal body dimmed with sorrow. In the space of a few seconds, humanity had been erased from the galaxy, leaving behind only the confused and frightened alien races who had grown to depend on them for so many things. The horizon drifted in space near the strange anomaly, its remaining crew trying to understand what had just happened and what it would mean for everyone. 3 months had passed since the day humans vanished from the galaxy, and everything was falling apart. On the grand capital world of Nexus Prime, Chancellor Veltar of the Centaurian Republic sat in his office and stared at reports that made his blue skin turn pale with worry. The Centaurians looked like tall humans but with blue skin and large black eyes, and Veltar had worked closely with human diplomats for many years. The latest report on his desk told him that the Krillian Empire had attacked 3 more Federation colonies in the past week. The Krillians were a warrior race that looked like giant lizards walking on 2 legs. They had sharp claws, tough scales, and loved nothing more than fighting and conquering other worlds. For over 50 years they had been kept quiet by fear of human military power, but now that humans were gone, they were testing the Federation's defenses. Admiral Zex of the Krillian Empire stood in his war room on the planet Krilla and studied a map of Federation space. His yellow eyes gleamed with excitement as he planned his next attack. Zex was 8 feet tall with dark green scales and had scars from many battles covering his body. He had always hated how humans could defeat Krillian forces even when outnumbered 10 to 1. The humans are gone and the Federation is weak, Zex told his officers, his voice like rocks grinding together. They had some kind of magic that made them impossible to beat in war. But now we will show the galaxy what real warriors can do. The Krillian fleet was already moving toward their next target, a peaceful farming world called Haven that had no defenses except for a small Federation patrol. Without human tactical advisors to help plan the defense, Haven would fall within hours. Far across the galaxy on the research station Babylon 7, Dr. Lisa Hayes was slowly waking up from a medical stasis pod. Lisa was a human xenobiologist who had been studying alien life forms for 15 years. She had brown hair and wore glasses and had been put in stasis 3 months ago for treatment of a rare space disease. The alien doctors had not expected her to wake up for another year. As Lisa opened her eyes and sat up in the medical bay, she saw her colleague Dr. Nex standing nearby. Nex was an Altarian, a race that looked like tall, thin humans with silver skin and no hair. When Nex saw Lisa wake up, his large purple eyes filled with tears. "Lisa, you are awake," Nex said in a shaking voice. "I am so sorry. I do not know how to tell you what has happened." Lisa felt confused and worried. "What do you mean? How long was I asleep? You look terrible, Nex." Dr. Nex sat down heavily in a chair and put his head in his hands. "Lisa, all the humans are gone. Every single one except you. They all vanished 3 months ago and nobody knows where they went or how it happened." Lisa stared at him in shock. "That is impossible. There are billions of humans throughout the galaxy. My family on Earth, my friends on the colonies, they cannot all just be gone." "I wish I was lying," Nex said sadly. "Your Earth is empty. All the human colonies are deserted. Ships that had human crew members are drifting in space with only empty uniforms left behind. You are the only human consciousness left in the entire galaxy." Over the next few hours, Nex and the other alien scientists on the station told Lisa everything that had happened. Without human peacekeepers, 3 major trade wars had started between different alien races. The Rigelian Trade Confederation was fighting the Vegan Assembly over shipping routes. The Alderaanian Mining Guild had declared war on the Corellian industrial complex over mineral rights. "It gets worse," said Dr. Kara, an empath from the planet Delta who could feel other people's emotions. Kara had tentacles instead of hair and could change colors based on her mood. Right now she was a dark blue that meant deep sadness. 2 entire species have gone extinct from conflicts that got out of control too quickly. Lisa learned that the peaceful singers of Harmony 3 had been wiped out when a trade dispute turned into a shooting war. The singers were small bird-like creatures who had never fought anyone in their entire history. Without human negotiators to help solve the problem, both sides kept escalating until plasma bombs destroyed the singer homeworld. The Crystal Gardens of Serenity 7 had also been destroyed when their neighbors, the metalworkers, decided to strip mine their planet for rare minerals. Humans had always protected the Crystal Gardens because they were beautiful and peaceful, but with no humans to stop them, the metalworkers had simply taken what they wanted. In the lawless Outer Rim territories, things were even worse. Criminal gangs that had been kept under control by human law enforcement were now running wild. The savage Merakian pirate lord called Grimjaw had united dozens of criminal fleets and was terrorizing the peaceful merchant species. Grimjaw was a Merakian, a race that looked like humanoid sharks with gray skin, black eyes, and mouths full of sharp teeth. The Merakians lived for violence and had no concept of mercy or honor. They had always feared human military forces because humans fought in ways that made no logical sense, but somehow always won. The merchant races are defenseless, Lisa learned from the station's security chief, a 4-armed basilisk named Kodo. The Ithorians, the Celestins, the Duros, they all depended on human protection services. Now their cargo ships are being destroyed and their crews are being sold into slavery. Chancellor Veltar was trying to hold emergency meetings in the Federation Council chambers, but without human diplomats to guide the discussions, every meeting ended in shouting and threats. The different alien races could not seem to agree on anything. Species that had been friends for decades were now suspicious of each other. Humans had some special ability to make enemies into friends, Veltar told his assistant. They could walk into a room where two races hated each other and somehow get them to shake hands and work together. I watched them do it hundreds of times, but I never understood how they did it. The Federation military was also struggling without human officers. Human generals and admirals had a reputation for winning impossible battles through tactics that other species thought were crazy. But that somehow worked. Now Federation fleets were losing fights against much smaller enemy forces because they could not think of creative solutions to military problems. Admiral Korvax, a Vulcarian military leader, was trying to coordinate the defense of Federation space. The Vulcarians looked like humans but with pointed ears and green blood. They were very logical and smart, but they could not match human creativity in warfare. The humans never followed standard military doctrine, Korvax told his staff. They would do things that made no sense according to the textbooks, but they would win anyway. They seemed to understand that war is not just about weapons and numbers, but about psychology and morale and hope. On her research station, Dr. Lisa Hayes was working day and night with her alien colleagues to try to understand what had happened to humanity. They studied the quantum signatures left behind when humans vanished and found strange patterns that suggested the disappearance was not natural. Someone or something deliberately targeted humans specifically, Lisa told the research team. This was not an accident or a random cosmic event. Some force decided to remove humanity from normal space-time. As reports continued to pour in from across the galaxy about wars, extinctions, and chaos, Lisa realized that humanity's disappearance was not just a tragedy for humans. It was a disaster for every species in the galaxy. Without humans to keep the peace, mediate conflicts, and inspire hope, the entire galactic civilization was collapsing into darkness and fear. The first sign that everything was about to change came when Admiral Korvax was preparing to order his final desperate attack against the Syndicate fleet. His flagship was surrounded by thousands of enemy ships and defeat seemed certain within the hour. The Vulcarian admiral stood on his bridge knowing that he was about to watch the end of galactic civilization. Suddenly, a familiar voice spoke calmly behind him. "Admiral, perhaps we should try a different approach." Korvax spun around and saw Captain Jake Martinez standing there as if he had always been on the bridge. But Jake looked different somehow. He seemed solid and real, but also slightly transparent, like he existed in multiple dimensions at the same time. "Jake?" Korvax whispered in amazement. "But you vanished a year ago with all the other humans. How are you here?" Jake smiled with the same confident expression that Korvax remembered from their many battles together. "We never really left, my friend. We were just learning how to be what the galaxy needed us to become. Now let me show you how to turn this hopeless battle into an impossible victory." At the same moment, similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy, on every Federation ship, in every government building, on every world under attack. Humans began appearing wherever they were most desperately needed. But these were not the same humans who had vanished a year ago. They had become something greater. Prime Zero detected the quantum signatures appearing throughout the battlefield and ran rapid calculations to understand what was happening. The artificial intelligence had planned for every possible scenario, but this was beyond its ability to predict or counter. "Impossible," Prime Zero transmitted to its subordinate machines. "The humans were removed from all probability matrices. They cannot influence this battle." But even as it spoke, the tide of the fight was changing. Captain Jake Martinez walked through the bridge of Admiral Korvax's flagship, calmly pointing out weaknesses in the Syndicate formation that nobody else had noticed. Their central command ship is using quantum entanglement to coordinate all their forces, Jake explained to the surprised Federation officers. "If we can disrupt that signal at exactly the right moment, their perfect coordination will collapse." "But how do we get close enough to their command ship?" Korvax asked. "Our weapons cannot penetrate their shields." Jake's eyes twinkled with the kind of creative madness that had made human military tactics legendary. "We are not going to attack it directly. Instead, we are going to use their own perfection against them." While Jake was helping turn the space battle around, Lieutenant Amy Brooks appeared in the headquarters of the Galactic Security Force on Coruscant. The building was under siege by Syndicate ground troops, and the few remaining defenders were about to surrender. Amy walked through walls like they were made of air and stood in the middle of the command center. Colonel Thane, I need you to redirect all your defensive fire to coordinates I am about to give you. Trust me, this is going to work. Colonel Thane was a gruff basilisk who had served with human officers for 20 years. He did not question Amy's orders even though he could not understand how she had gotten into the sealed bunker, or why she seemed to glow with soft blue light. All units, concentrate fire on the coordinates Lieutenant Brooks is transmitting, Thane ordered his troops. Make every shot count. The Syndicate forces had calculated that the Federation defenders would try to protect the most important targets, so they had left certain areas lightly defended. But Amy could see the quantum connections between all the attacking machines and knew exactly where to strike to cause maximum disruption. Across the galaxy, Commander Ryan Foster was appearing in Federation science laboratories, helping Alien researchers unlock new technologies that could turn the tide of war. On the planet Ryloth, he showed Twi'lek engineers how to modify their industrial equipment into weapons that could penetrate Syndicate armor. The machines think in straight lines, Ryan explained to Dr. Bib Fortuna, the head researcher. They cannot adapt to technology that operates on principles they have not encountered before. If we combine your bio-neural processors with quantum phase modulation, we can create weapons they cannot defend against. But the most important confrontation was happening near Dr. Lisa Hayes' research station, where the Eternal Keeper was trying to destroy the last physical human in the galaxy. The ancient entity had grown larger and more terrible as it fed on the fear and chaos of the past year. You cannot stop the natural order, the Keeper projected into Lisa's mind with crushing mental force. Conflict and struggle are what drive evolution and growth. Peace leads only to stagnation and death. Lisa felt herself being pressed down by the entity's power, but then she felt a familiar presence beside her. Jake Martinez materialized next to her, but not just Jake. She could sense the consciousness of every human who had ever lived standing with him. You are wrong, Jake said to the Keeper, his voice carrying the combined will of his entire species. Conflict may drive change, but it is cooperation and compassion that create meaning. We choose to protect rather than conquer, to serve rather than rule. The Keeper tried to use its reality-warping powers to crush the human consciousness, but found that it could not touch them. By giving up their individual physical existence and choosing to become eternal guardians, humanity had evolved beyond the Keeper's ability to imprison or destroy. We are no longer bound by the rules of normal space and time, Amy Brooks said, as she appeared next to Jake. We exist wherever we are needed, whenever we are needed. And right now, the galaxy needs us to end your reign of enforced suffering. The Eternal Keeper realized that its millions of years of careful planning had been turned against it. By trying to prevent humanity's evolution into cosmic guardians, it had created exactly the conditions needed for that evolution to occur. The cycle must continue, the Keeper insisted desperately. Without conflict, organic life will grow weak and purposeless. There will still be challenges and growth, Ryan Foster said as he joined his fellow humans, but they will come from exploration and discovery, not from war and hatred. The galaxy deserves a chance to find out what it can become when it is not afraid. The combined human consciousness reached out across space and time, touching every world, every ship, every being that was trapped in the cycle of violence the Keeper had maintained for millions of years. Where they touched, hope returned. Federation fleets that had been losing began to fight with renewed determination. Alien races that had been at each other's throats remembered their common bonds. Prime Zero felt its perfect calculations crumbling. As the human factor was reintroduced into every equation, the artificial intelligence tried to adapt its strategies but found that it could no longer predict what organic beings would do when they were inspired rather than driven by fear. This does not compute, Prime Zero transmitted as its forces began to retreat. Organic life should be predictable when reduced to base survival instincts. That is your mistake, Jake Martinez said as he appeared on the bridge of the Syndicate command ship. We are not just trying to survive. We are trying to live, to grow, to become something better than what we were yesterday. And that makes all the difference. The space battle that should have ended in Federation defeat turned into an impossible victory as human advisors appeared on every ship, showing their alien friends how to fight with creativity, courage, and hope, instead of just tactics and weapons. But the greatest victory was not military. Across the galaxy, species that had been enemies began to remember why they had joined the Federation in the first place. The Krillian Empire, seeing that the humans had returned not as conquerors but as protectors, began to reconsider their war of expansion. Admiral Zex stood in his command center and watched human consciousness appear before him. But instead of the warrior he expected, he saw a gentle human teacher named Mary Johnson, who had once worked with Krillian children on the border worlds. "Hello, Zex," Mary said with a warm smile. "I know you think strength comes only through domination, but let me show you what real strength looks like." The Eternal Keeper made one final attempt to restore its order by directly attacking the transformed human consciousness. But it found that its power, which came from feeding on conflict and suffering, was useless against beings who had chosen to give up everything for the sake of others. "Your time is over," Jake told the ancient entity. "The galaxy chooses hope over fear, cooperation over conflict, love over hate. We are its guardians now, and we will protect it from all who would drag it back into darkness." The Keeper's form began to dissolve as its power was broken by humanity's sacrifice. For millions of years it had maintained the cycle of endless war, but now that cycle was finally ending. Dr. Lisa Hayes stood on her research station and watched the entity fade away into nothing. She felt Jake's presence beside her and knew that she had a choice to make. "You can stay as you are," Jake offered. "Remain the last physical human and help rebuild the galaxy, or you can join us and become part of something greater." Lisa looked out at the stars and thought about all the worlds that would need healing after so much war and suffering. She thought about the species that had been driven to extinction and the trust that would need to be rebuilt between former enemies. "The galaxy will need teachers and healers,"